Paula, thanks very much indeed. Now, the Chancellor's pensions shake-up took most people by surprise this week, not least of all the Labour Party. They hesitated at first before the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Rachel Reeves, cautiously backed the plans. I'll speak to Rachel Reeves in a couple of minutes. Correction, 30 seconds. Also watching the discussion, our Twitter panel, the political editor at the Press Association, that's Andrew Woodcock, and the chief political correspondent for the Financial Times, the FT, Jim Pickard. They'll be providing their reactions via Twitter, and you can follow what they're saying on the pop-ups at the bottom of the screen. You can see there. You can also follow this programme on our Twitter account at Murnaghan Sky. And if you want to join in the conversation, you can use the hashtag Murnaghan. So Rachel Reeves is alongside me. That was 30 seconds, Rachel, wasn't it? Not 2 minutes.
Definitely.
The pensions pot that you used to have to convert into an annuity, now you can play with, do what you will with. The worry is some people will be prudent, whilst others will be profligate. And there are those people, including some from within your own party, who say the discipline that an annuity created is something which we still need.
Well, first of all, Ed Miliband said in a speech in January 2012 that the pension market isn't working for ordinary people. The fees and charges are far too high, and people aren't getting a good deal when it comes to buying an annuity because they're not getting the advice and the guidance that they need. So we support reforms to the pension market so people can get a better deal and have more flexibility, especially at the moment when people are just not getting a very good deal on their annuity. But we're talking about people here who are coming up to retirement, who have saved all their life, have put something aside. I think we can trust those people to make sensible decisions about how they want to use their money in retirement to support them.
So Ed Miliband diagnosed the problem, in common with many other people who knew there were a problem with the annuity markets, interest rates being so low and gilts and all the rest of it. It's quite another thing then to come up with the sort of reforms that the Chancellor's come up with. I mean, clearly it took you a while to think them through, and it did catch you off guard, didn't it?
Well, we didn't know that they were going to make the announcements on Wednesday. I would argue, though, that they haven't gone far enough in what they announced on Wednesday, because we've called for a cap on the fees and charges that pension providers are allowed to charge. And the government promised that a few months ago. They said it would be introduced by April 2014. It hasn't been, and all the evidence suggests, in fact, the government's own numbers suggest that people risk losing up to £200,000 during the course of their lives because of those fees and charges.
Rachel, we'd have to pay for a cap, wouldn't we? Because the problem is, well, if you want more financial advisors...
So the cap would be that so the pension funds wouldn't be able to charge more than, say, 1% a year on what you're putting in. At the moment, they can charge 1.2%, 1.5%, 2%, and that means when people come to retirement and they come to annuitise or take their money out, they've got less money than they were entitled to. Now, the government said there was going to be a full frontal assault on fees and charges. There's been nothing of the sort. There won't be a cap on fees and charges next month. I don't think there'll be one by the end of this Parliament. The government need to do that. That is one of the reforms that was missing, and we'll continue to call on them to do that.
You need to have some incentives in place, don't you? Because you're going to need an army of advisors. There's all this extra money sloshing around now that needs to be invested wherever, and you're going to need people, some shrewd operators, who are going to invest that wisely, lest you're going to have a situation where conmen, hucksters, tricksters, scammers all get a slice of the action. We don't want that to happen.
Well, we've set 3 tests for the government, which we'll be pressing them on over the next few weeks and months. The first is around advice, to make sure that people get the support and guidance to be able to make the right decisions for themselves when they're coming up for retirement, whether that's to buy an annuity, whether that's to take a lump sum, whether it's to draw down smaller amounts of money. So advice. The second test is around fairness. So will people on modest and low incomes be able to get a good deal, or is it just going to be the wealthy who get a better deal out of this? And the third is around cost, because what we don't want to see is further pressure on the social security budget and on the social care budget if people run out of money during their retirement. So the government have got to answer questions about those 3 things, but the Labour Party supports greater flexibility for people who have done the right thing all their lives and saved for their retirement.
Not everybody in the Labour Party supports it, do they? I mean, you know, people like Tom Watson, he said it's a one-sided charter for tax avoidance. There are other people on your backbenches who feel that that slightly more paternalistic approach is the right one.
Well, of course, there's always going to be debate and disagreement. But, you know, Tom is right to ask some of those questions about these reforms in the same way that we are doing. And Tom wants to see, and I want to see as well, that this benefits people on modest incomes and not just the privileged few. So we'll be asking detailed questions and asking the government for answers to will people still be able to buy a whole life annuity, and will they still be able to get a good rate on that? That's really important, so that people on modest incomes who have managed to save a little bit during their working lives will know that they can still get that security. So there's still questions the government have to answer, but I think it's right that people who have done the right thing and saved get a bit more flexibility, especially when we know, and Ed has said for a couple of years now, that the pension market isn't working for ordinary people.
Well, agreeing with the government seems to be becoming a bit of a habit, doesn't it? I mean, you've agreed on pension reform. On the welfare cap, you're going to be going into the lobbies on Wednesday, agreeing with the government again. Tell us why.
Well, we agree on some things, and I think it is responsible for politicians to say where they agree as well as where they disagree. But, you know, on energy markets, on the bedroom tax, there's plenty of areas where we're not in agreement with the government. But we do need to ensure that we are controlling the costs of social security, and so we will be supporting this week a cap on the overall social security bill. Now, the reality is, again, this is an area where the government need to go further because during the course of this Parliament, the government are going to be borrowing a staggering £13 billion more on social security than they originally planned. In the budget this week,
under
they
Labour,
had to...
the number of people who never worked in their lifetime doubled, didn't it? I mean, lecturing the government on how they handle the welfare
under
budget's a bit
Labour,
rich.
the employment rate reached a record high, and
By
in fact the
importing
employment
people from
rate,
abroad.
this is a proportion of the workforce who are in work, and even under this government, for all their claims about job creation, the employment rate hasn't reached the level it reached under the last government. If you look at what's happened to long-term unemployment, the number of young people out of work for more than a year has doubled under this government. But the point is that social security is going up under this government because they've failed to tackle the root causes of the rising social security bill. So we've got more than 5 million people who are paid less than a living wage and so having to draw on housing benefit and tax credits. We've got those rising numbers of long-term and youth unemployment, and we've got the housing benefit bill going up because house building is at a record low. Unless you do something about those things, the benefit bill is going up. So under the Tories and the Liberal Democrats, benefits are going up. A Labour government would take the action that's needed to control the costs of social security.
Just briefly, I mean, they can't be doing everything wrong, because if you look at today's polls, that gap, which was a healthy gap as far as Labour are concerned a year ago, has narrowed down now to virtually nothing. So whether it's the recovery in the economy, whether it's welfare reforms, whatever this government's doing, the voters are liking it. And now you've got these pension reforms. The older voters tend to vote. That causes you another headache. There is every possibility now that you're going to be in opposition for another 5 years.
Well, there's been different polls out of this weekend, and some of them have had a wider gap between us and the Conservative Party. But the most important poll is what happens on election day, and I'm confident that Labour have got the right policies, whether it's freezing energy bills, cancelling the bedroom tax, extending childcare. We've got the policies to address the cost of living crisis to help ordinary families.
Rachel Reeves, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now,